you're only going to find the K4 front-wheel drive, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. So I'm in Canada and we get snow 3, 4, sometimes 5 months out of the year. But if you have a good set of winter tires inside of a front-wheel drive car, you're going to be fine in slippery, snowy conditions. There's always the option of switching off traction control if you really need to as well. There are a series of different wheel sizes and styles available inside of the K4. 16-inch at a minimum, up to 18-inch when you get into the GT line version of the ride. And the GT line wheels, I just absolutely love the look of it. Not saying that the look here isn't good, but you look at the style of it, blacked out with some silver highlights. It does look pretty cool, but I personally would just want them fully blacked out instead. The front end style of the K4 definitely reminds me of the Forte. Not saying that that's a bad thing. You're going to find LED headlamps inside of the ride, and then a nice matte finish to the lower part of the bumper that wraps through part of that grille as well. Kia vehicles are known for having a lot of technology. And while this trim level doesn't have the forward sensing system or front-facing camera, it has a lot of other useful driving features like a lane keep assist. There's also going to be adaptive cruise control, and paired together, it's not hands-free driving, but it can keep you perfectly balanced in your lane. The highest available trim does have that forward sensing system available, along with side-mounted cameras for a surround view monitor, along with a blind spot monitoring system, which is phenomenal. Underneath the hood of the K4, there are 2 different engine choices that are available. So the base engine is going to be a 2-liter naturally aspirated engine. Then there's the option for the 1.6-liter turbocharged engine instead. This one has 147 horsepower and 132 pound-feet of torque, which, I mean, isn't the greatest, but at the same time, drop yourself into sport mode. I'm going to be utilizing the hand shifter. Let's get back up to highway speed, and 3, 2, and... $100. So for a little car, with this is the 2-liter engine, I would say that that's pretty solid performance. I think for most people, if you're just looking at getting into a car that can get you from A to B and it can get you out of tighter spaces, or if you need to get up to highway speed past somebody, the 2-liter engine inside of the K4 is pretty good. But if you want the best possible performance inside of the K4, the 1.6 liter is the way to go. It's got 190 horsepower, 195 pound-feet of torque, which is almost 50% more power compared to the 2-liter engine. You're going to get good fuel economy either way, but I personally would go for the 1.6 in the GT line, but that's going to come down to a matter of personal preference. It's nice and simple underneath the hood here. There's a tiny little engine cover. There's easy access in order to top up your wiper fluid, change your oil, and then easy access to the battery as well. And then the warranty inside of the Kia world is pretty good. In Canada, your basic and powertrain are a 5-year, 100,000 kilometer. In the US, the basic is a 5-year, 60,000 mile, with the powertrain getting bumped up to an impressive 10-year, 100,000 mile instead. I would love to see a 10-year warranty for the powertrain in Canada, but you've always got the option of increasing your warranty at time of purchase if you really need that extra peace of mind. But just take care of your ride. Take it in for regular oil changes, regularly scheduled maintenance to get the best possible life out of it. I've seen Kias easily roll over 300,000 kilometers, so 200,000 plus miles, but it does hinge on you actually taking care of your vehicle. See there, the side view mirrors inside of the K4 have turn signals built in. There is the option for the blind spot view monitor, where there'd be a lower mounted camera in the higher levels of the vehicle. They're manual folding, and most trims also have the blind spot monitoring system. So if somebody enters the blind spot on either side, that's going to highlight in order to let you know whichever side of the blind spot that they've entered. There's some intelligent access, so as long as you've got the fob on you, you can push there in order to lock or unlock the ride. Along the door here, you've got your heated seat, heated steering wheel. Some trim levels of the K4 also have the option for ventilated first row seats, but all of the buttons here are standard across the board. So side view mirror controls, window controls, kill off power to the rear windows with some door storage. There's a speaker there. Increase or decrease the brightness of the cluster. There's a parking brake and traction control with your hood release. And these are just the regular carpeted mats you're going to find inside of the ride. You can already see they're taking a little bit of hate right now. So what I'd recommend, just go for the thermoplastic rubber trays, whether that's from Kia directly, if you go to WeatherTech, whatever the case may be. There's trunk release, fuel door release, manual adjusting seats, and these are just the cloth seats that you're going to find inside of the ride. There is the option though for synthetic leather seat in some trims. Taking a peek at the steering wheel as well as the cluster screen inside of the Kia K4. The K4 technically has two different versions of the cluster screen available. You're going to find this setup in the majority of trim levels of the ride. The screen itself is the same size, but there's just different flexibilities and capabilities inside of the higher trims, specifically the GT line. But in this video, we're going to dive in and I'm going to show you everything that you need to know about the steering wheel and the cluster. So first thing is that the steering wheel inside the ride might be heated. On the driver's side door, there's a button there that you can push for 2 individual levels for the heated steering wheel, and it's heated all the way around. It feels good. It's also going to be a manual adjust for the steering wheel, so just down by where your left knee would sit, there's a release there to go in, out, up and down to find that perfect position for you. Once you find it, click it in order to lock it back into place. Stick along the left-hand side is going to be your blinkers. Inside of that higher trim, when you hit the turn stock, you'd also have your blind spot view monitor there, but not available in this trim, but you've got your blinkers. From there, a series of selectable light modes. You're going to want to be in auto mode the majority of the time, and the big benefit is that if you push away, it brings you into an auto headlamp mode. So what that means is that if the vehicle recognizes the high beams are needed, it's going to turn them on automatically. If somebody's oncoming, it's going to turn them off, and then right back on again when they're necessary. It's pretty neat. You could then push away in order to turn that feature off, but you could always flash your high beams out if you want to. If you want to permanently lock your high beams out, going to go to that top light mode instead. You can push away to turn your high beams on, pull towards you in order to turn them off instead. But like I said, you're going to be in that auto mode the majority of the time. Along the right side, you've got your blinkers. So one down is just to get rid of any sort of liquid that might be on the windshield, so a one-time mist. Up brings you into your intermittent mode, and there are a series of other speed modes. And then in the intermittent mode, you could then adjust using the little rocker here in order to adjust how fast or slow the rain is hitting your windshield. You're then going to pull towards you in order to get that wiper fluid going. Straightforward. And there are so many different buttons. The ones along the right-hand side here, so there's a voice command prompt, but that's going to be for your Siri or for your Google Assistant. So you need to be connected through Android Auto or Apple CarPlay or have your phone connected for that to work. You can answer or hang up on a phone call. There's a volume rocker here. You can mute out as well by pushing in. There are 2 custom buttons as well, and you can set that up through the infotainment system. So through your setup, there's the option of going to your buttons. So the mode button here, what's that going to do? It's typically going to adjust out between all of your sources that you'd prefer. So AM, FM, SiriusXM, etc. So as you move between, you can see there it's moving between all of our available sources. This button is another custom button that you can do a few things. So I've got it programmed right now to turn the display off. So you've got 2 custom buttons here, and then you've got this one, which is going to let you change between all of your available songs or presets. So you can move between different options there if you'd like to. You could also do a press and hold if you wanted it to act as a seek button instead. Pretty useful. Buttons along the left-hand side, there are a ton of different options. So you've got the flexibility of toggling on your cruise control, and it's strictly going to be a smart cruise or adaptive cruise control system. So it's your set it and forget it cruise. So let's say if you set it at 100 kilometers an hour on the highway, if the car in front of you slows down, yours will also slow down. They change lanes, pick up speed, you change lanes, it's going to pick you back up to your previously set speed. There's no option for traditional cruise control. Strictly going to be adaptive or the smart cruise inside of the K4. But you can toggle it on this way. I'm stopped, so it's not going to let me do it. But you've got to be going at least 30 kilometers an hour. From there, so it sets it at your current speed. You could then increase or decrease 1 kilometer, 1 mile per hour using the switch. you can push and hold up in order to go up 10 kilometers an hour or 5 miles per hour instead, or drop down 10 or 5 respectively. You can push in the middle to pause your speed, you can hit the brake to pause your speed, and then you can push again to resume your previously set speed. Then there's also a distance indicator, so it's how close or far are you away from the vehicle that's in front of you. I want you to think of that one like almost like a 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi type of a rule for how close or far you are away. I personally am normally on level 1 all the time, but you can be on level 1 residential streets, level 2 or 3 on highways or interstates, depending on your own preference. There's this one, which is a lane keep or lane follow assist. The car's not self-driving, but when you've got the smart cruise control system turned on with this one as well, it's really cool. So it's going to keep you nice and balanced in your lane as you go. Even if you keep your hands off the steering wheel for a few seconds, it's going to keep you nice and balanced as long as those lane markings are recognized. It's a really, really useful setting. But if you want to see the smart cruise control system in person, like how it's actually used, check down in the description of this video for a little walkthrough and a live demonstration. There's this little guy, which is your drive mode selector. So you've got either your normal or sport mode instead. They're pretty useful, but sport mode, what that's going to do is essentially change out your shift points. But one cool thing is that in the ride, you've also got a hand shifter where you can adjust out to different gears instead. So you drop down to drive, shoot across one in order to be able to get to that setting instead. It's pretty useful. It works off of the same principles as paddle shifters. So if you want to walk through on how that's done, check in the description of this video. And then there are so many different things that you need to know about that little cluster screen. So the cluster is slightly customizable. So you can see there are some different modes that are available. But inside of the infotainment system, you've also got the flexibility of adjusting out the cluster. So if you wanted to, you could adjust out your brightness. The brightness can also be adjusted. There's a switch down by your left knee to do it. And then you can also lock things out. So let's say if you love the normal mode, but you really like the look of the sport mode, you can adjust that out instead. It's kind of neat. Or you can link it to the drive mode. So whatever drive mode you're in, that's going to lock it out to that style. Now, inside of the cluster, you've got your fuel gauge along the very bottom. There's a fuel gauge along the very top, so how many kilometers or miles till empty, the gear that you're currently in, your speedometer. So you've got your speedometer this way, and then as you start to speed up, you'll notice that this gauge starts to increase for your speed. The tachometer is also there, and same idea. As you go to speed up, you put your foot down, you can see that gauge starting to go up as well. It's actually kind of cool. And then you've also got your temperature along the very bottom, outside, so your engine temperature, outside temperature with your odometer, and then you've got this little pages button in the very middle. So we could hit that little pages icon in order to move between a few different options. So you can see here 3 unique pages, and then this one is your different fuel economy options or your fuel options. You've got current trip, since refueling, and then since last reset. So I want you to think of current trip from the last ignition cycle. So from the last time that you turn the vehicle on, that's what this one's going to be for. From there, you've also got your since refueling. So since you last filled up, what fuel economy have you gotten? And then your since last reset. So you can manually reset this one. Anything here, you can see there, it's got an OK button. All you're going to do is push and hold OK, and that's going to recenter you out there instead, so bring you back to 0. Taking a peek at the infotainment system inside of the Kia K4. The K4 technically has 2 different versions of this screen, so it's either going to be one with factory navigation or one without, like what we're looking at here. But regardless of whether or not yours has factory nav, you can hook up over Android or iPhone devices to use Google Maps, Apple Maps, and Waze through Apple devices, and then Google Maps and Waze through Android. So you've got some flexibility there. In this video, I'm going to show you everything you need to know. You've got this little hamburger button along the very top where you can look at a few options, including profile settings, where you'll be able to change users. So if you've got multiple people driving the vehicle, you can select technically up to 3 profiles. So there's driver 1, driver 2, or your guest profile instead. The guest profile is actually going to have some limitations, so you won't be able to do certain reset options and things like that. You've got your current date, your current time, your connection level, and then if you've got a phone on the wireless charge pad, that is going to give you a little heads up that there's a phone charging up. You can tap the time there in order to actually get in to adjust your date and time. And then there's this little tab along the top you can slide down in order to either toggle the display off, or there are some other options like adjusting the brightness, entering a quiet mode, or hitting the gear icon to adjust things out. So if you wanted to have your touchscreen beep there, changing devices, and a few other options, you can do that. and hit done. And you can see there, it's added in some additional options. So the beeping that we're getting here, if you want to toggle that off, you can. So it's a matter of preference whether or not that one comes on or not. Quiet mode essentially is going to play the audio strictly through the front speakers, not through the rear. From here, you've got a series of other options. So we're going to start off on the media side of things. So for media, you've got AM, FM, SiriusXM, Bluetooth audio, sounds of nature as well. If you had a USB stick with some MP3s on there, you'd be able to use that too. But one thing is that it's strictly going to be USB Type-C. So this is a USB Type-A device, just with a little adapter. You're going to plug it in down the middle. And when you plug it in, you've got two different ports. You've got the one on the left versus the right. You have to use the one on the left. And then there's a little button here. So you need to make sure you're on the charging and then the data transfer, because if that one's not on, you're not actually going to get data transfer. It's strictly going to work for charging instead. There are a series of different speaker choices available inside of the ride. So you've got either a 4, a 6, or an 8 speaker system instead. This one is the 6 speaker setup, and you've got, let's go through our media for a second here, and USB music. So I'm going to let you listen to a few different songs here. So the audio that we're listening to here is just coming out of the microphone, so there's no post-processing done there whatsoever. I mean, I'd say that that's pretty good audio, in my opinion. And then if we listen to another song here. These times it feels like nobody's right, yeah. So figure out where else we succeed and then invest all of my time into that. I mean, for a 6 speaker system, I would say that's pretty good. And that's just because the cabin inside of this ride is fairly small. It's not big by any stretch, so you can just get some pretty pumping audio. So out of the 6 speaker system, if you're an audiophile, you're definitely going to appreciate the 8 speaker instead, but still, it's pretty good overall. You've got the option of going into Bluetooth, sounds of nature, and a few other things. Then there's some buttons down the bottom here, but your media gives you so many options. Like I said, AM, FM, SiriusXM, etc. If you wanted to be able to save in stations, you could. So if you wanted to save it as a favorite. So as of right now, there are some SiriusXM stations. You could get rid of the stations that way if you want to. Back into FM, we have nothing now. So if you wanted to save in a station, it's exactly what you just saw there. So anything that has this little icon next to it, you're just going to push in order to be able to save it as a preset or as a favorited station. So let's go through, and there are a few. Now, this is obviously going to be based off of your geographic area. So if you're new to an area, just listen to some stations and then save in some of your favorites. Once you've got them all saved in, just go to your favorites there to see. And it's a mix. So if you wanted to listen to AM, FM, SiriusXM, you'd have the flexibility to be able to do it. And it's a mix of all the stations there. You can hit this little hamburger icon to edit your favorites. So if you don't like the order, you can do a drag and drop in order to adjust them. You can select certain ones to delete. You can mark all, unmark all to delete whatever options there you wanted to instead. SiriusXM is straightforward. You go into your SiriusXM station. Along the very bottom, you can click there to get to a fuller screen instead if you want to. You can save the station out. You can enter a unique channel name if you'd like to as well. If you're on FM, hit there, you can scan. So if rather than going through stations, you can just scan to different options. If you're new to a geographic area, you can do a just basic refresh instead to see what stations are available. You could also do a manual tune that way. So you can adjust out this way if you want to. It's kind of a neat way to do it. Back into your traditional FM. Enter a station this way instead. So you can just type in your station that way. And then there are some other basics. So you've got a series of different sound settings that are available. So let's see here, speed dependent volume. So if you're going faster or slower, it can automatically adjust your volume. Startup maximum, with this one enabled. If you've got the audio cranked and then you turn the car off, turn it back on again, it's not going to be cranked. So it'll start it at a lower volume instead. Do you want it focused on the driver, people in the back row, etc.? Recenter it in. You could do a little fade or a balance to fine tune it or bring it back to center again. You can adjust things out. So the treble, mid-range, and bass. This is slightly off, mid-range down, treble down, something like this, in my opinion, gives pretty good audio inside of the ride, but that's going to come down to a matter of personal preference. So what I'd recommend here is play one of your favorite songs, and then as you're listening, start to adjust it out until you find something that works well for your ears. Let's see, guidance volumes. So as you go to back up, there are different beepings and guidance prompts and things like that you can adjust. Driver assistant warnings with a few different options here. So there's haptic warning. So if you start to veer over into a lane without signaling someone's in your blind spot, you'll get a little bit of a steering wheel vibration, almost like you're running over a rumble pavement or there's something wrong with your alignment. That's not the case. It's just that there's something going on and the vehicle's letting you know. There's a blind spot warning sound. So if somebody enters the blind spot on either side of the vehicle, you'll see that that highlights red to let you know, but you can get a basic warning sound there instead if you'd like to, and then just different priority sounds. For Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, you can adjust individual options. So if you wanted your media played at a certain volume, your ringtones at different volumes, you'd have the flexibility to be able to do it. And then I think that was about it. SiriusXM gives us the basics there as well. So sound settings, subscription status, and things like that. But that's using media inside of the ride. Next up is going to be adding in a phone.
Your mobile device in order to search.
And as of right now, you can see there.
Select the name that matches vehicle name on the screen.
There we go. So starting off on the iPhone side of things, we just want to hit K4. Pin numbers match up, so let's pair. Do you want to allow contacts and favorites to sync up? This is not my car. So if it was yours, you could obviously say yes there if you wanted to. And we are now fully connected. So if you wanted to stop here, you could. So your phone's connected, so you can make phone calls and stream audio that way.
Contacts download was unsuccessful.
That said unsuccessful because when I connected, I said no. But you can see there, we are technically connected to the phone. I could dial through if I wanted to, listen to audio on my phone. But you've also got the option for Apple CarPlay. And one cool thing is that inside of the K4, it's wireless Apple CarPlay as well. You do have the option for backwards compatibility. So if you wanted to use a USB device, you've got the flexibility to do it. I mean, that's USB type A, so you'd have to use a USB-C, but you've got that available as an option. But because we're wireless, we're just gonna go use CarPlay. It's nice that it is backwards compatible though, so you could go either way if you want to. But a few seconds in, and we should be just about connected here. Phone projection, iPhone 14, and it's just doing the final stages of connecting in a few seconds. Ah, look at that, fully connected. I love it, and your full screen Apple CarPlay, and it looks so good. So this is gonna be your home screen for Apple CarPlay. You've got your current time, connection, and battery levels, your map that was open last, audio application was open last, miscellaneous application, and then you can go to an icon view back to a home screen instead. You can see there that you've got your map that's open. So this home screen is kind of dynamic. So this is going to be whatever map was open last. If you've got an event that's coming up today, that's going to show up today as well. And then you'll have your search box and audio. But if you didn't have a calendar notification coming up today, the search box and the audio box would be stretched across the top there instead. You've got Apple Maps, Google Maps, and Waze inside of Apple CarPlay. Honestly, all the map applications work great. My personal go-to though is Waze, and big reason why, as you go to drive, people mark things off on the map. You can see live traffic. If there are police pulling people over, if there are speed traps and things like that, people are pretty good at marking that off, and you can mark things off. So if you see a speed trap, you see hazards and things like that, you can give people a heads up and let them know. But you've got a ton of map applications there. Hoopla's a library app. Live One's a radio app. You can listen to your music, podcasts, and things like that as well. It's amazing. And there's some flexibility here. So you can also slightly adjust this out for driving focus. If you wanted to adjust your wallpaper to change out the look, you'd have the flexibility to do it as well. And then you've got Siri too. So if you do a long button push and hold on that steering wheel button, that's going to activate your Siri assistant there instead. But I mean, it's straightforward using it. If you were back home, you'd be on this main screen, and in order to get back into CarPlay, you can hit CarPlay there. But when you're in one of the K4s that doesn't have factory nav, there's a button down the middle here, and that's for map. So if you hit map, that's gonna launch you into the map right on your phone instead. I love that Kia's designed that as an option. So if you don't have factory nav, you're connected over to CarPlay, you've got that available as an option. You've got this little settings icon that you can hit as well in order to get to this screen. And you can see there we're connected to CarPlay. So if you wanted to disconnect from CarPlay and strictly be connected for phone calls, you've got that flexibility. So it's straightforward doing it. You can reconnect to CarPlay that way as well. And then you can see there, open Apple CarPlay. And one cool thing is that you can also adjust the layout of these icons. So on your phone, all you're gonna do, go into your settings, general, and then CarPlay. you're going to find your vehicle and then go to Customize, and you can see there all of the available options. So if you wanted your podcast at the top, along with whatever map application you'd like to use, you've got that flexibility. Anything with a minus next to it, you can also remove it from the screen if you wanted to. It saves it at the bottom though, so you could add it back in if you want. But if you've played around with the layout too much and you don't like what you've done, on the phone you can hit reset, reset, in order to bring it back to the factory default layout instead. If you were to hop back home again, hit that little settings icon. Again, you can disconnect easily that way if you didn't want to be connected to Apple CarPlay anymore. So I know that's a bit, but that's how you set up Apple devices inside of the Kia K4. Setting up Android devices is the exact same process. So if you weren't on the screen, you're back home there, you can hit your phone there. Phone projection would be for Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, but as of right now, I'm connected to the iPhone. So what you're going to want to do here, swipe across. If you've got multiple phones connected, go to your setup, device connections, and then you've got this screen again. You're just going to hit add new.
On your mobile device in order to search. On your phone, device, select the name that matches vehicle name on the screen.
Waiting for K4 to show up, which it did. PIN numbers match up, so okay there. Look at that, K4 is connecting, and it's also wireless Android Auto. Again, backwards compatibility is there, so if you wanted to use a USB cable, you absolutely could. But yes, we want to use Android Auto, and it'll take a second there. And look at that, 3, 2, 1, we are fully connected to Android Auto as well. And I mean, it looks nice. Now on the phone right now, it's also asking, do you want to allow access to contacts and messages? Again, this is not my car, so I'm going to say no to that one. If it was yours, you could say yes, but Android Auto layout is simple and straightforward. You've got your, so it said unsuccessful because I said no to that message, but you've got your current battery, connection level, and time. Google Maps is available here with full pinch to zoom capabilities. It's not like that on the Apple CarPlay side. You can search for addresses. You could also look at satellite view versus terrain view. You've got the option of adjusting things on your route, so avoiding highways, toll roads, and ferries. It's the same thing on Google Maps. Mute out notifications, change up your heading, and things like that. It's available. You can hit this icon in order to get to your little split screen there instead. And then if you wanted to go full screen maps, just that way again, and you're connected. You've also got your voice assistant, so you can hit that, or hit the voice assistant icon on the steering wheel in order to be able to turn that on instead. And then if you're here, you hit again to get to a little icon view. I've got Waze installed on this Android device, but if you've got Waze installed on your Android and it's not showing up, check down in the description of this video for a little walkthrough on how to add it in. Now, you've also got the flexibility of adjusting the layout, and it's similar to the iPhone side. So what you want to do on Android is search for Android Auto, go to Android Auto settings, and then you're looking for Customize Launcher. And then if you wanted to adjust it, so you wanted to have Waze on top, you want your phone up there, you can do it. Anything with a check mark next to it, you could deselect it as well, or you can add it back in by selecting it again. But it's not dynamic the same way it was on the iPhone side, so it doesn't adjust it on the fly. In order to adjust it here, you just have to go back home, go into your settings. From there, you're going to disconnect from Android Auto. You're going to reconnect to Android Auto when it launches back in, go to our icon view, and the changes that we've made have now come into effect. It's that easy doing it. It's pretty simple. I would like to see that dynamic, but you can at least adjust it. Back on our little settings icon here, you can either be connected to Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, not both, but you can do a mix and match. So if you had one phone that you wanted to use for phone calls and one phone that you could do for media, you can do that. So you can do a little mix and match here. You can also hit the hamburger icon to do connection priority. So if you've got multiple phones connected, who's it going to try to connect to first instead? And it's automatically going to connect when you start the vehicle up. So it's straightforward doing it. And then if you go to delete devices, you could either mark individual or mark all, and then hit delete, and yes. And 3, 2, 1. Both phones are now disconnected from the vehicle. And it's that easy setting up Android and iPhone devices inside of this ride. From here, the only other big one, like you've got system prompts and things like that, but Bluetooth system information is where you're going to go to change your vehicle name. So if you don't like it to be the generic K4, you can change it to whatever you want to from there. There's phone projection options for Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, so you can see phones that have been connected previously. You can hit this icon there to generate a new Wi-Fi password or look at your owner's manual. but that's how you set up a phone inside the ride. Phone projection is if you had Android Auto or Apple CarPlay set up. Valet mode would lock the screen out, give you some flexibility there. You could see some vehicle diagnostic info if you were connected to one of the main profiles, but you won't be able to see it when you're in the guest profile there. Same thing with maintenance. There are basic notifications and online manual too. So if this video doesn't help out, or if you're getting some weird messages in the cluster, you can just scan the little QR code on your phone, and that's going to launch in to the fully digital owner's manual there instead. So you can look at all of the other options that are available here too. Hit the little home icon, gets you into setup. And there are so many different settings that are available. But one thing I like about Kia is that you've got the flexibility to search, or you can jump in to all of these options just using this option here. So driver assistance, climate, lights, and things like that. So you'll see a few things organized a few different ways. But let's start off on the driving convenience side of things. So firstly is going to be smart cruise control. So inside of the K4, you've only got the option for adaptive cruise. So there's no regular cruise control option available. You could adjust out the distance, acceleration, reaction speed, and things like that. But you can adjust some other settings this way if you'd like. There's some climate settings. There's nothing exciting here. Honestly, I just recommend keeping all of these ones at their default. Flashes, you can either have 1, 3, 5, or 7 as a default. And then there's some high beam options here too. There's some options for your door where you can choose when the vehicle automatically either locks or unlocks instead. 2-press unlock, so when you go to unlock the doors, first button press is going to be just the driver's door. Second is going to be the rest of the doors instead. And then there's also a smart trunk, and you can open up the driver's side window. So let's hop outside and I'll show you how those two work. So what you have to do, make sure that the car's locked. You get about 10 to 15 feet away for a few seconds. And then you're just going to walk up towards the back end. And watch this. You could hit the lock button to stop that process, but you've got a smart trunk feature. So rather than a foot activated swipe, it's proximity censored instead. I honestly love that feature. And then there's one other neat key fob trick that you can do, and that's rolling the windows down. So what you're going to do, push and hold the unlock button, release it in order to stop it part way, push and hold again in order to continue the process. So those are pretty cool features. It would be nice if the remote window opened all of the windows, and then raising them back up again would be kind of cool, but at least you've got this available as an option. Then there are some convenience settings. Rear occupant alert. If you've opened up the second row door, go to turn the vehicle off, it's going to chime at you inside of the cluster to check the back seats. And then you can turn off the wireless charge pad there. You can do an oil change yourself if you'd like to, and it's straightforward. From here, you've got your icon view back to this view. So as I mentioned, you can get to all of these options a few different ways. So we've already seen the driving convenience settings. Driving safety gives you a few other options. So you've got forward safety. So if the vehicle recognizes a potential collision, it could let you know. There's your blind spot safety system as well. So if somebody enters the blind spot on either side of the vehicle, you can see there in the side view mirror, it's going to turn on in order to let you know. If we go back into driver attention warning, leading vehicle departure, if you've come down to a complete stop and there's a vehicle in front of you that starts driving away, if you don't start driving, it's going to give you a little message in the cluster letting you know that the leading vehicle has started moving, so get yourself moving. Inattentive driver warning, if you start to veer over too many times without signaling, eventually it's going to tell you that you should probably take a break. There are some options for your speed limit too, so you've got your speed limit assist, a warning, or nothing. I personally am a bigger fan of nothing. You can see there that it shows up your road speed inside of the cluster screen, so you can get a warning if you're going too fast. And then there's speed limit assist as well. So if the speed goes from, let's say, 60 down to 50, you could then hit the up-down switch there. So you could drop down to whatever the new currently posted speed is. And it's the same thing. If the speed goes from, let's say, 50 to 60, you could then push up in order to go to that higher speed instead. But I'm not a fan of that. You could do that if you'd like. And then there's the speed limit offset. So are you okay with going over or under the speed limit? There's some parking safety options, rear cross traffic safety. So as you go to back up, if there's somebody coming perpendicular, so from the left or the right side, you'll get a little message letting you know that there's somebody there. I'm a big fan of keeping all of these guidelines enabled as well, but you've got some settings here. Jumping back in, your rear parking guidelines. If you don't want those guidelines, you can get rid of them if you wanted to. And there's also this little guy for some additional sound settings, which we've already seen. So again, you'll see a few of these different settings done a few different ways. There are some sound settings here, which we've seen some of these ones already. Actually, I think all of them. Yeah, we've seen all of those sound settings. You can search for individual settings if you'd like to. Device connections, where you can see all of your previously connected phones, change your vehicle name. User profile, again, being able to have multiple user profiles where it's going to remember things like your presets, phones that you've connected. If you've got factory navigation, it would remember all of your previously saved addresses as well. There is a basic screen layout. There's a screensaver available. So when you go to turn the display off, do you want to have a watch face on there, or do you want to have nothing showing up? There's a split screen that's available. If you had factory navigation, that would give you additional options there as well. There are some basic display options where you can adjust the brightness this way if you'd like to. There are some camera settings, so display contents, display settings, so you can adjust the brightness and things like that of the camera. A blue light filter is kind of neat as well. So later on at night, or if it's darker out, what it's going to do with the blue filter on is it's going to reduce eye strain, and you can have it automatically come on, or you can set it yourself and you can adjust. Yeah, you can see it going there. Whether or not it's warmer or cooler, or you can completely disable it if you want. There are a series of different buttons that are available. So there's the one down the center stack here, and this one, what do you want it to do? Do you want it to do nothing, turn the display off, etc.? So now if we hit that button, it turns the display off. And back into some different cluster views where you've got the option of adjusting the brightness this way. So you can adjust the brightness there, but down by your left knee, there's also a switch there that you can use in order to adjust the brightness out instead. There are basic camera settings, which we've already seen. Cluster theme selection, which we've already seen that. Content selection, do you want to show your wiper, light display, icy road warning, and then a basic welcome sound. Inside of the highest trim level of the vehicle, so the GT Line Luxe in Canada, and then the GT Line with the convenience pack, there's also the option for the blind spot view monitor, where you could hit the turn stalk to go left or right, and it would show you your side-mounted camera there, right inside of the cluster. But the lower trims don't have that available. Let's see. Cluster we've seen, there's Kia Connect, and then some general settings. So you've got your basic device information. You can look at some system information, where you've got your modem, what's new, date and time. So do you want the vehicle to determine the date and time automatically, or do you want to manually set it? Do you want the 12 versus 24-hour mode? So do you prefer that military time instead? And then you can adjust for daylight savings time, and you can lock in your time zone. So if you live somewhere where you straddle a time zone and it's constantly flipping you back and forward, you've got the flexibility to lock it into any of the other options instead. You can change out your language. Do you want to be in English, French, Spanish, or Korean? And then you can change out your keyboard. You can adjust your measurement units. So with your units, do you want to be in either kilometers or miles? And that's going to change out what's going on in the cluster. You can adjust your temperature as well too. Do you want to be in Celsius or Fahrenheit? And then you've got your fuel economy. So because I'm in kilometers, we've got that available. If you're in miles, it changes it out instead. So do you want to be in US or UK? And then you can change out your tire pressure unit as well. So do you want to be in PSI, kPa, or bar? There are some media options too. So do you want your media off when you go to start the vehicle up? I like coming into some audio, but it's a matter of preference. And then do you want to have your media continue to play for a few minutes when you go to turn the vehicle off? There's some reset options. So because I'm in the guest profile, I can only delete the guest profile information. If you were in any of the other main profiles, you could reset all. So you'd essentially be able to bring the vehicle back to a full factory reset there instead. And that is going to be the basics of the screen. You can see there are some buttons along the very bottom, so you can jump into this home screen. There's a map button, but because I'm not connected to Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, it does nothing. If you were connected, it would launch you into your phone maps. There's a basic search option there, so you could search through the vehicle for certain things. You can mute out audio or adjust your audio this way instead if you'd like to. There's also an option for going into your media and changing out a few different ways. So you could either go at media this way or AM, FM, SiriusXM down the bottom. There's your custom button, jumping into your basic setup as well. Then you've got all of your climate control settings down the bottom. So you could increase, decrease the fan speed, going to your max windshield or rear window defroster. Adjust if you want this going to your windshield face feet. You can adjust the climate, turn on AC and things like that. And then if the screen is ever giving you problems like Apple CarPlay is not working, Android Auto is not working, or just things are going on, you've got the flexibility to reset. So you saw there, you can do a full factory reset if you wanted to. That's probably the worst thing to do because it's going to remove everything from the screen. So if you've got factory nav, it'll get rid of all of your addresses. It's going to get rid of your presets and everything else. So what you can do is grab a paper clip. And there's a little button right underneath the little power button there. You're just going to take the paper clip and insert. And when you do that, that's just going to turn the screen off instead. So what we're doing is we're entering a soft reboot cycle. And that should get rid of the majority of issues that you're having. Think of it just like resetting your phone. It's the same idea. So it's going to get rid of the majority of issues that you may be having. So like I said, if your phone's not connecting, if it's giving you issues with your radio, things like that, that's going to be the first thing for you to try. Factory reset would be the next thing from there. You've got a few cup holders, but you've got sliding. So if you need something for a bigger bottle, you've got that flexibility. Or if you just want to have both sides, fully open, just for more storage space, that's available too. Got a little armrest here that's non-lockable, decent amount of space. The dash highlights are pretty neat. Down low, there's a non-lockable glove box that has a good amount of space to it. And just up overhead. So this one doesn't have a roof inside of the ride, so no sunroof here. There's a manual dimming rear view mirror. And then basic controls like an SOS mode, tow mode, turn on all of your cabin lights there as well. Have them turn off, well, not come on with the door, yay or nay. There's also going to be a visor with a vanity mirror. Light up overhead is going to be their standard. There's a ticket receipt holder. And then this guy stretches out to block all of the sun that might be hitting your face. But overall, I would say the design for the price point is pretty solid. There's an assist handle overhead, and then with the seat, so it's a manual seat. Oh yeah, so it's as far down as it's gonna go right now. I'm 6 feet tall again for reference, and up overhead, I've got like 4 inches of headspace. So if you're 6'4", you'll probably comfortably be able to sit inside of this ride, which is wild. But yeah, the seat's comfortable, even though it's a cloth seat, fairly comfy. Hold on, let's go into the second row here. Okay, so the handle for the second row reminds me of the Hyundai Veloster. So you got to pull there in order to get inside, but you've got your handle, window control with bottle storage down low, same cloth seats that have anchor points and top tethers up overhead. Space-wise back here, with the driver's seat set up for myself being 6 feet tall, inside of the second row, I've got a great amount of foot space, knee space, and head space is a little tight. So my head is just touching the top there, like maybe half an inch of clearance space. Like if I were to slouch a little bit, I'd be okay, but it's tight for people that are bigger than 6 feet. But if you've just got kids anyways, it's not a big deal, or shorter friends, family, etc. But spacing back here is okay. It's gonna be a little tight to get 3 full-size adults that are my size back here. Not impossible, but just tight. Yeah, my size, no dice. In the middle seat. I will give Kia this though. Even though there's no space for me inside of the middle seat, it's actually comfortable otherwise. Like if I were like 5'8", the cushion's not the most comfortable, but it's not really uncomfortable at the same time. Yeah, honestly, I wouldn't mind sitting in the second row of the K4, but it would have to be one of the outboard seats for sure. There are no cup holders built into the seats, but you're gonna find a little handle on the passenger side, handle and a hook on the driver, and then up overhead, you've got some cabin lights there. Nice and simple. Down low, you're gonna find some basic vent controls, so it's single zone climate in this trim with a few USB Type-C power points, and then a little storage tray as well. And then you're also gonna find a little mesh pocket strictly behind the passenger side. The rear end of the K4 is kind of neat. It's fairly sloped for the rear window, which means that you're not going to find a rear windshield wiper. It's also fairly low profile, so it's not that it's impossible to see out of the back using the rear view mirror. It's a little bit challenging, but still, I think the style is kind of neat. You've got LED tail lamps inside of the ride with the brakes stretching right across, for the most part, along the middle there. And that same highlight that we saw along the front end follows through back here. You're going to find a matte black bumper with a little silver painted part on the very bottom. You're not going to find the reverse park sensing system inside of the majority of trim levels of the K4. But one thing you will find is the backup camera. And then getting into the trunk of the K4 can be done so many different ways. There's a button just next to the driver's seat. Just underneath the A in Kia, there's also a button there that you can push. You can use the key fob in order to do it that way. The one thing that I love about Kia's, the smart trunk feature. I love it way more than the foot activated lift gates, because if those sensors are covered in snow, ice, or mud, it's not going to work. But this is guaranteed to work. It's such a cool feature. And then looking at the trunk of the ride, there's nothing off to the left or the right-hand side. One nice thing though, a little storage tray here you can lift up, and you're going to find a mini spare tire, and then the jack just above that as well. So if you ever pop a tire, puncture a tire, you can change it out yourself. Everything's there. But one of the nice things about being a Kia owner is that you do have access to roadside assistance, and they can help out with tire changing, fuel delivery, lockout, winching services, and so many other things. Just one of the added benefits of being a Kia owner. And folding down the second row seats can be done, but it's just from the trunk area. There's no way that you can do it from the second row. So there's some releases you're going to pull on both the left and the right side. It's a 40-60 bench, so it's 40 on the driver, 60 on the passenger, so you can fold them down individually. If you can reach it from the trunk, you can push the seats down that way. But if you can't reach it, just unlock, and then you can get access to it on either side instead. And there is a surprising amount of space inside of the boot. Looking at the trunk measurements, the ones behind the first row are going from right where the trunk would close to just in behind that little armrest between the first row seats. So you'd gain or lose a little bit of extra space depending on how far forward or backwards those seats are. And then one other thing to consider is that the seats inside of the K4 cannot be slid forwards or backwards or reclined. So they're locked into place there, but like I said, you get a good amount of space inside of this trunk. Filling up fuel inside of the K4 is done just along the driver's side. And one nice thing is that it is a locked cover. So in order to get inside, just next to the driver's seat, there's a release. And it's unlocked. And it's a cap system. I don't know if you know this, but you take the cap off, you can slide it right along the fuel door rather than just letting it hang. But you can let it hang either way if you want to. When looking at fuel quality inside of the ride, minimum manufacturer's recommendation inside of the K4 is just regular gas. So 87 octane is all you need to use. There's really no added benefit to using anything higher than that. When it comes down to fuel economy inside of the ride, the 2-liter engine is going to get slightly better fuel economy than the 1.6-liter turbo. Not by much, but by a little bit. Looking at rear-world fuel economy inside of the K4, picking the car up and doing a bit of driving, so it's been a mix of stop and go, some free-flowing highway traffic, and then some city driving, I've averaged about 7.1 liters per 100, which is just under the manufacturer's stated amount. If you were just cruising on the highway distances though, I think you're going to definitely get better than manufacturer's stated fuel economy numbers inside of this ride. Now, does it make sense to go for the 2-liter or the 1.6? You're going to spend slightly more every year on fuel inside of the 1.6, but for the performance upgrade that you get, I think that's going to be worth it for the right person. Initial impressions of the K4. This is actually a cool little car, especially at the price point that Kia is selling it at. It has quite a few different selling features that are positive. En route handling here. Come on, 2-liter! The regular 2-liter engine. It's nothing crazy from a performance perspective. It's a car to get you from A to B. The handling in it so far here has been pretty good. And you'd think from something that's small like this, you wouldn't, or cheap like this as well, I guess I should say, you wouldn't really expect much. But the seat quality, the comfort, It's not the most comfortable seat by any stretch. The headrest is okay. Like, it's not bad overall. Fairly comfortable there for the seat. The cabin noise, it's a bit noisy. It's nothing that you wouldn't be able to live with. It's just like a regular car from a cabin noise perspective. Like, would active noise cancellation be great? Yes, but nothing to complain about. And one thing that I love about Kia vehicles, their adaptive cruise control system is so good. And the overall handling that you get, it's a wet road. It's one thing I love about sedans. They are so responsive. Is it going to be as good as a sports car, performance car? No. But again, for most people, that's probably going to be good enough. And that was everything you needed to know about the Kia K4. You can find all of the build details and links off to Kia Canada and US down in the description. But if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with someone if you think they might find it helpful. And until I see you next time, take care. Kias are known for having a lot of technology. While there's no forward sensing system or the Kia vehicles are no. So you're going to find that One thing to point out is that the cargo measurements that you're looking at, so they're going from right where the trunk would close here, further behind the first